Today we have to talk about Tesla and their Robotaxi service. As you can see, they just got a statewide license to operate in Texas. Elon's happy, investors are happy, and, Tesla bulls who are always happy about anything that Tesla says. But also a lot of people seem to be hating. We got Waymo is crushing Tesla in the Robotaxi race. Laughably far behind Waymo. Robotaxis suck. After all, we usually take what Mr. Elon Musk has to say because his accuracy on his predictions isn't, let's just say, the most reliable. He is pathologically optimistic, as he said himself. So what is the actual timeline for robotaxis? Are your Ubers, your Waymos, your Baidus, are they afraid at all? We'll do some quick approximations to see just how realistic some of these predictions are, and just how sucky and laughably far behind Tesla is of its competitors. We got a lot to cover, so let's get right into it. First things first, we're going to cover this real quick to give some context. This will be important for later in the discussion when we talk about comparing the cost of Waymo and Uber versus Tesla's grand vision on robotaxis. What does a robotaxi actually mean and how does it work? Somebody else will go far deeper than I will on this topic, but we need to at least see what is Tesla's strategy that differs so much so from Waymo, Baidu, and other competitors. Here we go, let's keep it simple. So first things first, Tesla's FSD, full self-driving capabilities, are done purely through camera vision. So think a human's eyes, a human's brain. We see things on the road, we understand the things we need to do. If there's a child in front of us, we don't hit them, we stop, we let them cross the street. We use our own eyes and brain to make these decisions. And so for Tesla, they have millions of cars on the road, which makes for millions of eyeballs that are constantly collecting data on the decisions that should and shouldn't be made. Every car is a source of data, and therefore they have over something like 3.8 billion miles of experience, which they claim translates into a 54% safer driver than if a human, you, were driving the car. And again, we're not going to get into the super technical stuff, but these vehicles run on a bunch of neural networks that specialize in certain things. So one may be for object detection, one may be for staying in your lane, one may be for path planning, one may be turning at stop signs or red lights. Whatever it is, those decisions are made by first the camera seeing what's actually in front of it, and then the brain making that overall decision to maneuver the car in some way to achieve that goal. Again, why is this important? We'll get to that. We're almost there. And you also may be wondering, why in the world do I have an orchestra on my screen right now? Well, I like to think of Tesla's FSD system as a group of things working together to achieve some result. In an orchestra, a collection of instruments make a very nice sound. We're going to rely on some instruments more than others during certain parts of the song, but at the end of the day, if everybody's on the same page, then hopefully the sound you hear will be pretty good. So as we can see, this orchestra is orchestrated through these 7 cameras, which give the neural networks the ability to actually identify the things that are going on within the camera's view at multiple different angles, obviously, to get a fuller picture. Now, why is this important? Well, Waymo, for example, has a variety of different sensors that they use, cameras, LiDAR, radar, to create this 360-degree view of the environment. It's really just a more expensive orchestra and reliant on a few more instruments to make a better sound. We wouldn't really refer to this as eyes and brains, right? There's a whole lot of other things going on here that aid in making better decisions on the road. Baidu has a similar setup, a whole lot of stuff going on at the same time. Ultimately, the takeaway from all of this is that Tesla and Elon are making a huge bet that full self-driving achieved through camera vision, simulating really a human brain and human eyes, is the only feasible way to achieve autonomy at scale, essentially mimicking the human ability to drive, but for a machine. And you can see by this camera view, it looks like something straight out of a video game or the Terminator, that there's a whole lot of stuff going on. And obviously we do this every single day when we're on the road, because our brains are very good at classifying things we shouldn't do and should do, some more than others, obviously. So that's the Tesla grand vision. That's the game plan. And we looked at how that compares to Waymo and Baidu, who are implementing a bunch of other sensors that help aid in this decision making. And it's important to note that all use AI in some way. What else would you expect? And one last thing that I found pretty interesting is Baidu actually just released a vehicle with level 4 automation. In other words, completely mind off, don't have to do anything, but you still have to sit in the seat. And Tesla, although it was just permitted to release their robotaxi fleet in Texas, because human safety drivers can actually drive the vehicle remotely in the case of an emergency. And yes, we have seen an instance where I guess a robotaxi wasn't going to stop at a train crossing, so good thing, because that driver probably would have got smoked. All right, we went through the tech stuff real quick, but let's get to why any of this is important. Why does it create a more scalable model for Tesla versus its competitors? And is it even more competitive than its competitors? So again, I know we just went through a lot, about 10 years of technological development at Tesla. Instead of us going through and performing this thorough analysis on all the different assumptions we need to make to create any sort of prediction financially for Tesla and competitors, we're going to leverage the hard work of Brian Wang here. Estimating per car, Robotaxi revenue and expenses. I'm going to leave a link to this article in the description so you can tear it apart and create your own model if you're so ambitious. But this model essentially goes through all the different considerations we need to make when, one, pricing the actual cost of the service for Tesla Robotaxi consumers, and two, the price that Tesla would have to pay because of maintenance, wear and tear, depreciate, etc. And again, these fares and fees are subject to a ton of different things that can change constantly. As we know, Uber can absolutely rip you depending on the time and day, as we see with surge pricing. If you're leaving the casino at 12 or 1 a.m., then you're going to be paying probably all your winnings or double whatever you lost just on getting an Uber back home. And obviously there's other factors that play into it. Not super important to go through each one of these, but just know there's a lot of things being considered here. We got cleaning, maintenance, major repairs, tires, annual cost due to depreciation. So with all of these things considered, you can see right here, let me zoom in for you. This is Brian Wang's assessment on what the price per mile will be for consumers of these services. So obviously Uber is very high. Even a personal car, your own little Toyota, would be double the cost per mile due to all those various things we just talked about compared to a Robotaxi fleet. Again, this is assuming at scale, so millions of vehicles. Even competitive with public transportation. I know you can't see this one here. This is commuter bus, commuter rail. So this is pretty optimistic. And I'll tell you, this is not the most optimistic thing that I've seen. There's been seemingly millions of articles and tweets talking about just how profitable this industry will be and how it's pretty much an infinite money glitch, comparable to what NVIDIA is doing with AI chips right now. We can see right here, scale this to millions of cars and you're looking at hundreds of billions in profit potential. Now that sounds absolutely ridiculous and absurd. We're going to get to this and make it really easy to understand when looking at a comparison to Uber. Real quick, the tweet we just looked at regarding the hundreds of billions of dollars of potential profit. Uber right now is worth 191 billion. So I think that's where the connection's being made. And I like that idea, so let's simplify it even more. Let's assume there's a total amount of Uber drivers of 7.8 million. Some of them are full-time, some of them are part-time. But based on how much time they drive, these are the low and high-end estimates of just how many miles they drive. And then we can simply multiply it out. We have the amount of full-time Uber drivers and how many miles they drive on the low and high ends. Same thing with part-time. And this was actually wrong, so I just corrected this now. We have 350 billion replaceable miles. What does that mean? These are all the possible miles that presumably Tesla could take advantage of with the Robotaxi fleet. And this is just considering the amount of miles that Uber's driving, not Waymo, not Baidu, not anybody else. And now in this first column, percent of Uber miles taken, we're going to make various assumptions. All right, Tesla's able to take 25% of the market share that Uber currently has. And we're going to go to the absolute optimist case that, you know what? Tesla Robotaxi puts Uber out of business and completely takes over every single human being in the space. Is that realistic? Obviously not right now. We'll get to that. And we can also assume with more vehicles, it would actually cost less and less for Tesla to maintain and upkeep these vehicles, hence the declining cost with more percent taken. And finally, the per mile cost, what you will pay. Now, again, these things could change and vary drastically. These are simply estimations. You could take this and do whatever you want with it, make your own estimations. This is simply to look at what the potential is and if people are lying and Elon's fibbing about just what is going on behind the hood of this Tesla Robotaxi thing. And the hundreds of billions of dollars in profit, yeah, that is possible if Musk's prediction, which we saw isn't always the most accurate and reliable, comes true at 25 cents per mile over time. I couldn't help myself. We know Elon's trying to do great things for humanity, save the current planet with electric vehicles, and ultimately make humans a multiplanetary species with SpaceX. But if there's anybody that might be even more optimistic than him. It's Cathie Wood talking about the technology that Elon is currently developing. And now she also claims a very low cost per mile, about 10 cents above where Elon sits at 25, 35 cents. But I think these are the two notes that stand out, and that's mobility as a service, including obviously Robotaxi, will exceed 10 trillion in sales by early 2030s. And that also by 2030, autonomous Robotaxi fleets could have a market cap of roughly 4 trillion, which I just found is currently valued at 530 billion. So about an 8x in 5 years is where Cathie Wood sits. This per mile cost, you right here, this is also including those other things like a base fare that you always pay to Uber and currently Robotaxi whenever you get a ride. So yeah, it could be 35 or 25 cents per mile, but obviously there's additional fees that aren't currently being considered when we look at these numbers, but it does help to drive the hype and show, hey, it could be really this cheap. This isn't realistic right now. Tesla's only trying out 10 to 20 vehicles, I think it is, in Texas. So obviously 10 to 20 vehicles isn't going to be bringing you in tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars in profit. The value comes when you scale that up to millions of vehicles, which again is the grand plan and prediction made by Elon over the coming years. Will he be right? Probably not, but we don't know. You never know. And so again, I think it's important to mention that is Tesla Robotaxi fleet, is that going to be able to take over, 20, 30, 50% of the total addressable market? I guess at the end of the day, it really comes down to what does the consumer prefer? Do people prefer a driver? And if they prefer a driver, then most of the time they're gonna pick the cheaper service. At least in my experience, it doesn't seem to be too big of a quality gap between, let's say, Uber and Lyft, which both have human drivers. So it's more or less just treated like a commodity, right? You just buy the cheaper service. I definitely do see a hesitancy to adopt, especially at the beginning. I just feel like people aren't gonna be willing to have no driver in the car. There is that safety valve of, well, there's a remote driver teleoperating this vehicle in the case of a potential accident. I could also see, well, Tesla is a very polarizing brand. Elon is a very polarizing figure, so people might be hesitant to hop on the bandwagon just because they hate Elon and Tesla so much. And of course, we have the perma Tesla lovers that no matter what Tesla does, no matter what Elon says, they all justify and absolutely love everything that happens around the company. So we have those two sides, but what about that rare breed in the middle, right? What about the breed that's unopinionated, which should be the majority of people, but at this point, I don't even know if that's the case. It seems like everybody has some sort of stance. So what do you think? How realistic is it that Tesla Robotaxi fleet takes over such a significant amount of that mobility as a service industry? Right now, sitting around 500 billion, Cathie Wood projecting it to grow 8x to 4 trillion within 5 years. To me, it sounds very optimistic, but again, who knows what can happen. I'm not really sure if there would be enough demand to use millions of Robotaxi fleet vehicles, but again, there's about 7.8 million Uber drivers, so I guess who knows? If they could take over just half of that, that's tens of billions of dollars in really pure profit. So I hope this helped understand kind of what Tesla's grand vision is and why their strategy is important to their potential profit numbers, how realistic or unrealistic these things could be depending on your assumptions. And again, feel free to take this table, rip it apart, and do whatever estimation you want to do. But at the end of the day, nobody really knows. Is Elon overly optimistic for what seems like the 10th year in a row about FSD? Are systems like Waymo and Baidu just inherently better, although not as scalable? And as Tesla is further behind, this is Tesla right here, this is Baidu over here, with Tesla being so much further behind in the levels of autonomy, does that matter? Do people care that there's a human safety driver, a teleoperator actually with the ability to intervene in the case of a potential accident or some rare corner case that Tesla's neural network just hasn't really come across enough yet to learn what to do properly? Again, there's a lot of questions to be had, but I hope this video shed some light on the Robotaxi discussion. I don't think it's as bad as what some of these headlines might suggest, but I do think it's not as good as the Tesla permabulls say. So let me know what you think. Have you heard from anybody that's actually been on any of these Robotaxi rides? I know there's been some YouTube videos out about it. Curious to see what you think. Let me know what your predictions are, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!